population decline. Greece's population could shrink by 25%.
The small town of 5,000 people has almost reduced by half.
Huge areas of the country that are just completely unpopulated.
Italy's had some of the lowest birth rate.
In a country with an already declining birth rate, a new study by the French Institute for Demographic Studies shows the desire to have children has fallen sharply in the past 20 years.
Across Europe, birth rates are dropping, and fast. But unlike Japan, this is happening far easier than anyone could have imagined. Some projections estimate that by 2050, the native EU population could drop 1/3 from 250 to just 300 million. For a country's population to stay constant, each woman needs to have an average of 2.1 children. But when we look at the birth rates across Europe, the results are shocking. Hungary, 1.5, Greece, 1.3, Spain, 1.2. And just like Japan, Europe is beginning to feel the strain. Rural schools across the continent are closing, not because of a lack of funding, but because there aren't enough children to fill the classrooms. And in countries like Germany and France, pensions are already swallowing up more than 20% of government budgets. Some countries are already panicking. Italy is giving away houses for €1 in an attempt to bring back life to abandoned towns. And Hungary is offering cash incentives to couples to have more children, not to mention mass migration policies pursued by nearly every European government. But none of it seems to be enough. So, now the continent is left wondering, is it set to suffer the same economic fate as Japan? Or is there any chance to escape this looming disaster? Before we break down which countries are being hit hardest and what migration means for Europe's future, make sure that you've subscribed, liked the video, and hit the bell icon so you never miss our deep dives into the world's biggest demographic challenges. It's often said that history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, and Europe today is starting to sound like Japan in the late 20th century. From Berlin to Barcelona, couples are waiting longer to marry, if they marry at all. Across much of the continent, careers, education, and the high cost of living are pushing parenthood into the future, or off the table entirely. In Germany, 1 in 3 women in their 40s without children cite financial strain as the reason. In Italy, nearly 70% of young adults still live with their parents, not out of choice, but because they can't afford to move out. Urban life is another factor. More than 80% of Europe's GDP is generated in cities, yet soaring rents eat up over 40% of young workers' incomes. Apartments shrink, families delay, and in many cases, children are never born. Climate anxiety also plays its part. Surveys show nearly 40% of young Europeans are rethinking kids altogether because of fears about the planet's future. The result is clear. Aging populations, shrinking classrooms, and entire villages in Eastern Europe slowly fading away, reclaimed by nature. Europe's demographic unraveling has begun. Is Europe racing towards extinction? The numbers from 2024 suggest that the continent is heading toward a demographic cliff. Across multiple countries, fertility rates have sunk to historic lows, with some nations recording figures unseen in centuries. Germany, Europe's economic powerhouse, saw its fertility rate tumble to 1.35 children per woman, the lowest since 1994. Researchers warn that migration is the only factor preventing Germany's population from shrinking overnight. Italy faces an even darker reality. Its fertility rate fell to a shocking 1.18, marking a record low. For every 1,000 Italians, only 6 babies were born while 11 people passed away, a grim imbalance that migration cannot fully offset. France, long considered one of Europe's more fertile nations, is also sliding. Its 2024 fertility rate of 1.62 is the lowest since the aftermath of World War I, revealing how fast the trend is spreading. Even wealthy Northern Europe isn't immune. Finland reported its lowest rate since 1776, while Poland sits near the bottom with just 1.1. The only slight exception comes from England and Wales, which registered a tiny 0.6% growth, surprisingly fueled by births to fathers over 60 years old. The numbers paint a stark picture of Europe's demographic future. According to Eurostat, the EU's overall population is projected to shrink by nearly 7% by 2100, dropping from 449 million in 2024 to around 419 million. While that decline might seem manageable, the story becomes much more dramatic when migration is factored in. Without new arrivals, the EU's population could plummet by 34%, leaving just 295 million people by the century's end. The impact won't be felt evenly across the continent. Countries like Latvia and Lithuania are facing catastrophic losses, with their populations set to shrink by nearly 38%. On the other hand, France and Germany appear somewhat insulated, showing only minor declines of about 0.6% and 1% when migration is included. In fact, only Luxembourg, Malta, and Sweden are projected to see any real growth. But remove migration and the picture darkens quickly. Italy's population could collapse by 52%, while Spain and Malta risk losing nearly half of their people. Even Germany, usually buffered by immigration, would see a 37% drop. France, surprisingly, could see its population decline by an astonishing 13% without migration, a stark reminder of just how critical newcomers are to Europe's demographic survival. Europe's demographic crisis is more than numbers on a chart. It's a looming transformation with real-world consequences. As birth rates collapse and populations age, the workforce is shrinking at an alarming pace. Fewer workers means slower economic growth, weaker innovation, and a smaller tax base to fund essential services. At the same time, the proportion of retirees is exploding, putting enormous pressure on pension and healthcare systems that are already swallowing up a fifth of government budgets in places like Germany and France. Without reform, many countries risk a fiscal crisis. Military strength is also tied to demographics. Shrinking recruitment pools mean fewer young people available to staff armies, underwhelming Europe's ability to defend itself in an increasingly unstable world. Inequality is another risk. Skilled workers will become scarce, driving up wages for some, while leaving others locked out of opportunity. Meanwhile, cultural norms are shifting as smaller families become the default, reshaping traditions, communities, and even entire rural regions where schools and towns are already closing. In short, Europe faces a generational storm. Fewer workers, more dependence, weaker defenses, and deepening social divides. Without bold solutions, demographic decline could become the continent's greatest long-term challenge. If the problem is stark, so are the potential solutions, and none of them will be easy. Immigration is the most immediate tool. By attracting skilled migrants, Europe can fill labor shortages and slow population decline. But immigration comes with political controversy, and governments must balance cultural integration with demographic necessity. Family policies offer another route. Countries can expand affordable healthcare, extend parental leave, and provide generous tax incentives for larger families. Hungary, for example, is experimenting with cash rewards for new parents, while Italy is offering abandoned houses for €1 to draw families back to empty towns. Yet so far, results remain modest. Work-life balance reforms may hold longer-term promise. Reducing job insecurity, cutting excessive hours, and making it easier for young couples to start families earlier could reverse some of the fertility decline. At the same time, investments in education, housing, and stable employment are critical if Europe hopes to convince its younger generation to raise children. Finally, innovation may cushion the demographic blow. Automation and AI can offset shrinking workforces, keeping economies productive even as populations decline. Combined with international cooperation and cultural adaptation, these strategies could give Europe a chance to escape demographic collapse. Europe's population story is one of decline, adaptation, and uncertain futures. Want more fascinating insights like this? Like, share, and please subscribe to our channel so we can keep uncovering the world's biggest demographic challenges and exploring the forces shaping our future.